Okay, Nick and Andy, massive game at the Amex Stadium this weekend. Brighton against Arsenal. Delighted to say I'll be there for PST, giving coverage on-site, videos, analysis, all over the website. We'll have you covered with that one. Obviously, Arsenal go into this game, Nick, 2 points behind Premier League leaders Liverpool. Chance to go top, at least for a few hours, it would seem. And then Brighton, they're scrambling for Europe late in the season as well. So there's a lot to play for here for these two teams. What are you looking forward to? Because I know you're a big Seagulls fan.
I am. I actually believe, and this is a tip of the iceberg situation, this could be a chaos agent weekend for the Premier League title race. I think a lot of things could go. There's just so many things I don't understand. First of all, you've got the end of a massively busy week plus a couple of days. This is where depth gets tested. I think we can all agree that Arsenal's depth, although they did a good job at midweek, they managed it. Clearly, Saka was rested. Not everybody played the full time. There were minutes spared along the way. But I just think this is one of those schedule period where crazy things happen. And I feel like Brighton, as crazy as this will say about Mikel Arteta, I feel like Brighton's going to be a little bit better prepared for this. And I like the situation they're in. I think the pressure is off. And I like the venue for them as well. So I am actually feeling like this could be maybe the only week the rest of the season where we might not see the Gunners get all the points.
Yeah, and of course as well, you have to don't forget that they are playing Bayern Munich in the Champions League quarterfinals a few days after as well. So there probably will be more rotation. Last weekend, when I was at the Etihad for Arsenal's 0-0 draw against City, Saka was limping out very gingerly afterwards. And I think this injury, Mikel Arteta has come out today and said, you know, we're going to wait to train him later on to see if he is available. So if he's not fit, this is my issue with Arsenal, I guess. We talked about the squad depth. It was great. Rotated, took care of business against Luton in midweek. But if you lose a Saka, a Rice, a Odegaard, a Saliba for an extended period of games right now, 3 or 4 games I'm talking, then that has a bigger impact, I think, on Arsenal than it does on Liverpool, as we've seen, and Manchester City probably as well. I think their squad depth and their experience of that squad is still what holds them a little bit better with this title race than Arsenal. But Andy, I mean, this game, what do you think will decide it? Because in some ways, you can't really prepare for Brighton. There are so many players that they can roll in and out. They have a few injuries, but they have some big players coming back. So this is not really a game that Arsenal would want right now in this busy period. I don't think if they could pick the schedule, Brighton away probably isn't the one that you want with a few injuries and rotating and trying to rest players as best you can.
No, and especially with Saka, he covers up and he almost functions as 2 or 3 players on the field with the attention that he draws from the opposing defense and how they teams kind of almost have to shift the defense left a little bit to account for him. And that opens up so much more space. I think when he's on the field, obviously Martin Odegaard is going to be so much more effective. Martinelli on the other side, even Kai Havertz has gotten some goals of late. But I think just the presence of Saka on the field, it makes that team so much better. And if he's not able to play, it sounds like he probably will be able to. But if he's not, the extra risk that Arsenal are going to have to take to create some of those chances, and you do that against Brighton, that plays into their hands very, very well. And so I'm buying a little bit, I think, of what Nick is putting down. But at the same time, they've been so incredibly inconsistent this season that it feels tough to stake anything on Brighton, to know what you're going to get, to know that they're going to show up, to know that they're going to put in a 90-minute performance. They're going to play with intensity and they're going to make things uncomfortable for the opponent. But results have just been so scattered this season for them that, as much as I would like to say, I think Brighton getting something out of this game, it probably leans Arsenal in the end.
And of course, Andy, a very low-key Tottenham fan there, given that prediction for the game. Nick, when we look at the players who come back in, obviously Martinelli, Jorginho, Declan Rice, Jesus, Kivior, and Saka, if he is fit and available. So they've had a decent, midweek rest, majority of those players there. This is where we thought Arsenal would be in their progression this season, right? Where they could handle European midweek games and the squad could rotate and be a bit better. And, I'm just going to bring it up. It was around about this time last season that things started to unravel when Saliba went down with an injury and then they started drawing games, and then obviously Man City caught them in the end. But we talked about it a lot on this show in recent weeks. There is a different feel to this Arsenal team right now. You look at the almost mentality of the players who came in midweek at Luton. It's like, all right, this is our opportunity here. It's been so settled, the lineup throughout this season, that these players who are coming in now seem really prepared and really understand their role, and that they are going to be called upon down the stretch here. I don't think that strength and depth was there last season. So I'm just intrigued to see how much Arteta does mix it up this weekend.
Yeah, so I think you make a really interesting point. But I also think that if the depth was that trusted, we don't see Saka for 78 minutes against Man City, right? Like, he did not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're more of an England guy than me. I don't think he played at all in the England. He left before the first friendly. And so I don't know that he plays against Man City. And so he is, by the way, for a young guy who gets fouled as often, he has turned out to be incredibly resilient. And so I wonder, maybe he's rested this weekend because of Bayern Munich, but they've got a lot of gamers on that team. And what's strange to me is that we haven't seen more from, I don't know, I expected more from an Nketiah or a Reece Nelson or a Smith Rowe, who was fine, by the way, at midweek. It's not the depth of guys they've brought in to get them ready for Europe. It's the younger guys who maybe haven't made that step. And maybe this is something we've seen at Chelsea over the years, or we've seen it at Man City, like Cole Palmer having to leave. But it is a tricky little job teaching these guys how to play that role and to still reach their potential. It's a role we often see maybe more better filled by veterans who know their role. And that, to me, will be interesting to see, is who becomes the guy who gets sold for $35 million because he couldn't find his place there. And that's what's going to test this team down the stretch. And I think it's a big day big days for your Nketiahs and your Nelsons and your Smith Rowes.
Yeah, because I think when you look at Liverpool and Man City in recent years, when they've won the title, there's been games where players you wouldn't have expected have popped up with big goals and in big moments. And feels like Arsenal will need that over the next few weeks, especially with the Champions League quarterfinals and potentially semi-finals as well coming up, where they really will have to call on a lot of these squad players. You're right, Nick, a lot more than they have throughout the season. And I think Arteta, that's maybe where he's learning as well. He leaned so heavily last season on the core that it surprised me that they rotated as much as they did against Luton, but it worked. And I think we're going to see a bit more of it down the stretch here. Andy, Brighton, strange team. Obviously, we talked about that a lot. De Zerbi kind of is hinting all the time that he's going to sit down and talk with the owners, but clearly there's big clubs around Europe circling for him. And it seems like he's like, I've done pretty much everything I can do at Brighton under the financial limitations, et cetera, et cetera. But they are an excellent team to watch still. Pascal Gross is just consistently one of the best midfielders in the Premier League for a long time now. Flies under the radar a little bit, but they have João Pedro back as well up top, which I think obviously is a big boost for them to give them some, extra legs up top when they've been relying on Danny Welbeck for a long, long time now of all these injuries. So it's going to be tough for them, right? But I guess for Brighton, the fact that they've had a great run in the Europa League to the last 16, all these injuries, and they're still within a few points of finishing in Europa League spots again. I mean, it's not a bad season, is it? And I know there's a stat we like to throw out. They haven't won back-to-back games since September in the Premier League.
Yeah. It's very, very tough to, climb the table or even hold your place on the table if you can't string together 2, 3, 4, 5 wins. I mean, that's how they found themselves in Europe this season was just the consistency that they had last year. Every time they went up against one of the big sides, you backed them to get something out of it. And it's just been a little bit more up and down this season, a little bit less than what we came to expect over the last couple of years. I would be disappointed if De Zerbi goes in the summer. Obviously, there's bigger clubs that are going to give him more money to build the squad with, maybe in England, maybe somewhere else in Europe. But he has such an incredible project going at the moment. And that is, we saw this at Brighton as well with Graham Potter. Obviously, he goes to Chelsea and they're able to replace him. And so maybe from a Brighton perspective, it's not a huge issue. Maybe they've got someone kind of in mind, someone that's going to operate in the same way tactically. But I would love to see him stick there and see what he can build, because it feels like they are, what would you say, a really, really solid center back and maybe a little bit more of a creator out wide. I think in the next transfer window or two, from being a really, really solid, I don't know, 6th, 7th best team in the Premier League, and with a couple of bounces going your way, 6, 7 can become 4, 5, and then that can be. I mean, they don't feel like they're far away from establishing themselves as certainly a top half team every single season.
I'll do you one better. They've been missing Solly March for all but 7 games as one of the wide guys. Matoma is out for the rest of the season, has missed significant time. Pedro has missed time. Evan Ferguson's like 12 years old and has had some growing pains, right? Like the young, big striker. And there's one more I'm forgetting that I was going to bring.
Adingra has been.
Adingra went to the African Cup of Nations. So I actually tell me that, they've done some smart things. Lallana and Milner bringing them in to be not necessarily stars, but to show people how to win. Tell me that Pedro or Matoma, one of the two, and I think they're a few spots up on the table. A lot of teams are going to leave this season. Feeling like they missed their chance for Europe because of what Man United and Chelsea are right now.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for Brighton, but a big, big task against Arsenal this weekend. Score predictions, lads, quick. I think I'm going to go for a 4-2 win for Arsenal. I think there's going to be chaos. Brighton, when they're involved, there usually is. Nick, what are you going for?
I'm going for Snake Eyes.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Andy?
I'll go 3-2 Arsenal, late winner.
Oh, wow. Going to be drama. I'll be there on site at the Amex for PST, so head over to the website for all the latest information on Brighton against Arsenal down on the South Coast. Let's see if the Gunners on this busy period can get another big win, keep their title bid on track. But Brighton, never rule out the Seagulls. They've caused quite a few shocks over the last few years. And let's wait and see if Nick will be flapping his wings next week.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.